French paratroopers, then French Jewish children, murdered in France. Was it those Mormons or perhaps the Quakers? Obviously, the two groups, well, the group that was initially suspected, the Islamic radicals, now there's a belief that it could be neo-Nazis who could have committed these appalling crimes. Philippe Karsenty is a brave, honest and determined investigator and activist, and he joins us from Paris by Skype. Welcome to you, my friend.
Hi. Good afternoon, Michael.
Now, we're candid on this show, so let's be quite straightforward here. Everybody assumed it was an Islamic terror group initially, but now there are reports suggesting it could be three neo-Nazis who were expelled from the paratroops for their activities. What's the latest report on all this?
Well, I won't comment on that because we don't have really precise information. It's only journalists trying to elaborate from what they heard from someone who talked from the police. It's very there is no direct source about that, so I won't comment on that. But I can tell you that this is an anti-Semitic crime which has been perpetrated yesterday in France. It's an ugly one, and it has. I mean, whoever did it, this is a real anti-Semitic crime.
Mm-hmm.
Since World War II, we never had this in France, and I'm telling you something. Even during World War II, the Germans took the time to send the Jews out of France before killing them, as they did, as he did yesterday in Toulouse, which is really a shocking event, And I'm telling you something. This is the result of 15 years of anti-Semitic propaganda on the French TV. And
okay, Philip, before you go, let me ask you this, because this is. We're almost convinced, everything we're hearing now, in terms of the location and weapons and style of attack, is that the paratroopers were attacked by the same people, murdered by the same people who murdered this Jewish family. So it's not just anti-Semitic, there's a greater issue, surely.
Look, maybe, but I don't even want, all this information, remember, we are in France, and the information you are getting and I'm getting is not for sure the real one. So, there could be some manipulation where they try to integrate this anti-Semitic crime to something else. I don't trust them. They've been lying for so many years, so I'd like to wait a little bit before agglomerating everything. I think it's very, very important to be very cautious on that.
So you're suggesting that French media are dishonest when it comes to treatment of the French Jewish community?
Well, of course, but it's not only at this stage, it is not only the French media, it could be also the French politicians. Sarkozy, it's very bad for him to have, in the middle of his political campaign, to run for another mandate, to have an anti-Semitic crime. So he has to discredit each and every idea that it could be an anti-Semitic crime, and he has to make it much bigger. So I think we have to be very, very cautious in that.
But, Philippe, again, you're there, I'm not, but there's been a minute's silence in French schools, obviously condemned by everyone throughout French society. You seem to be almost blaming the French establishment for a crime committed by a lone or a small group of lunatics.
Well, again, the word lunatic, you don't really know who's behind it. You don't know if there is an Al-Qaeda or any terrorist group or any Islamist group. You don't really know who's behind it, or an extreme right. You don't even know what's going on here, what's behind it. So I think it's really important to be cautious and not to comment. What we can see is the fact. The fact is that we have young Jewish kids killed and a teacher killed because he is Jewish by someone. Mentioned that he's a lunatic. I don't think it's appropriate at this stage. I mean, it is a terrorist, a criminal, a murderer. Yeah. All what happened during these past 15 years, as I said before, in fighting against the Jews, and the people who have been fighting against the Jews have been receiving the Legion of Honor, for example, by Nicolas Sarkozy. All these people who have been the worst propagandists against Israel and the Jews have been honored in France. So I'm telling you something, there is an ugly climate of hate, Israel hate, I would say hatred against Israel and the Jews, which has going all over the French media. And I think it is really important now to make understand to Sarkozy and to the other French politicians that if they want to stop anti-Semitism, they just have to stop the anti-Semitic propaganda we're having on the French TV, on the French radio, and on the French media. I mean, if you just read the Agence France-Presse report, you become an anti-Semite. That's it.
But Philippe, I mean, you mentioned Israel and anti-Semitism, and I know this is very personal to you. You've campaigned for the longest time, and you did superb work with exposing some Palestinian propaganda. But they are different things, and there are Jewish people within the French establishment who edit newspapers, are influential in French TV. Sarkozy himself is part Jewish. There are many other politicians who are. They may be wrong in criticizing Israel, but it doesn't make them anti-Semitic.
Of course not. There is no problem with criticizing Israel. But the fact that the demonization of Israel, you can be critical of China, you can be critical of America, you can be critical of Colombia or whatever, but the way they criticize Israel is much higher than any other country. The way they portray Israel is really an ugly country. But if you know my big topic, which is Mohammed al-Dura hoax, which really shows, it shows the Israeli army killing a little Palestinian boy. So here, what we're seeing is the answer. You killed Arab kids. We're going to kill Jewish kids. So I'm telling you something. This propaganda machine has been very, very powerful. And you're right. We have some Jews in the media and some Jews in the French establishment, but these Jews are the worst when it comes to Israel. The price they pay to keep their job and to stay in their position is to be more and more anti-Israel and more anti-Jewish. And this is exactly what we're experiencing. And now, what is really shocking to me is that all of them are coming and crying on the dead Jews. They're here. Every time they have dead Jews, they're here. They've been crying for the Jews after the World War II, after the Shoah. They've been crying for Ilan Halimi, but they just don't think that it's their propaganda. It's their continuous and exaggerated critique of Israel.
Okay, Philippe, I have to stop you. Forgive me, it's not censorship, but we're running out of time. Well, when we know more about this, and perhaps we, God willing, have caught the perpetrators, we'll have you back on the show. Thank you so very much, as always.
Thank you very much, Michael. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.